Question 1. Cost-benefit analysis shows that admitting a cohort of students who do not fully meet the academic entry requirements but can afford higher tuition fees could significantly boost the university's revenue, helping to fund much-needed campus improvements. The university's administration is considering this option to address budget shortfalls, which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical obligations of Quds Open University. Option A. Negotiate with the Ministry of Higher Education for a temporary waiver of certain admission requirements based on the university's financial needs. Option B. Create a special admissions category for students who can pay higher tuition, allowing them to bypass some standard academic entry requirements. Option C. Focus on the financial benefits of admitting these students, arguing that increased revenue will ultimately benefit the entire university community through improved facilities. Option D. Prioritize adherence to established academic admission criteria and relevant Palestinian Ministry of Higher Education regulations, even if it means foregoing immediate financial gains. Correct answer is D. Prioritize adherence to established academic admission criteria and relevant Palestinian Ministry of Higher Education regulations, even if it means foregoing immediate financial gains. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's financial interests with its ethical obligations to prospective students and the integrity of its admissions process. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can lead to compromises that undermine fairness and transparency. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision aligns with Quds Open University's stated mission and the regulatory framework governing higher education admissions in Palestine. The correct approach involves prioritizing adherence to Quds Open University's established admission criteria and the relevant Palestinian Ministry of Higher Education regulations. This means ensuring that all applicants are evaluated based on the same objective standards, regardless of any perceived benefit to the university's financial standing. This approach is ethically sound as it upholds principles of fairness, equity, and transparency. It aligns with the regulatory expectation that admissions processes are merit-based and free from undue influence or bias, safeguarding the academic reputation of the institution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the financial benefit of admitting students who may not fully meet the criteria is ethically flawed. It violates the principle of fairness by creating an unequal playing field for applicants and undermines the academic standards of the university. This approach also risks contravening regulations that mandate specific academic prerequisites for admission, potentially leading to legal challenges and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that involves creating a separate, less rigorous admission track for students who can pay higher fees, even if they don't meet standard academic requirements, is also ethically problematic. This creates a two-tiered system that devalues academic merit and can be perceived as discriminatory. It also likely violates the spirit, if not the letter, of regulations designed to ensure that all students admitted to higher education programs possess a foundational level of academic preparedness. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough review of the university's admission policies, the regulations set forth by the Palestinian Ministry of Higher Education, and ethical guidelines for educational institutions. It requires an objective assessment of the potential consequences of any proposed action, considering not only financial implications, but also the impact on academic integrity, fairness to all applicants, and the university's reputation. When faced with pressure to deviate from established procedures, professionals should advocate for upholding established standards and seek guidance from relevant authorities if ambiguity exists. Question 2. Benchmark analysis indicates that adherence to examination protocols is critical for maintaining the integrity of the Quds Open University entrance exam. Considering the university's commitment to fair and equitable assessment, which of the following actions best exemplifies a candidate's responsibility in upholding these standards during the examination? Option A. Accessing online resources through a personal device to verify information for complex questions. Option B. Seeking assistance from another candidate during the exam by discreetly passing notes. Option C. Relying solely on one's own knowledge and understanding to answer all questions, as per the examination's explicit instructions. Option D. Utilizing personal notes and textbooks to answer questions, believing that comprehensive preparation justifies their use. The correct answer is D. Utilizing personal notes and textbooks to answer questions, believing that comprehensive preparation justifies their use. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape of academic integrity within the context of an entrance examination. The pressure to perform well on such an exam can lead individuals to consider shortcuts or unethical means to achieve a desired outcome. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness, honesty, and adherence to the rules set forth by Quds Open University. The correct approach involves understanding and strictly adhering to the examination's stated regulations regarding the use of external resources. This means relying solely on one's own knowledge and understanding, as explicitly permitted by the exam guidelines. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principle of academic honesty, ensuring a fair assessment of each candidate's abilities without unfair advantage. It directly aligns with the Quds Open University's commitment to evaluating candidates based on their merit and preparation. An incorrect approach that involves consulting unauthorized external materials, such as notes or online resources, during the exam is a direct violation of the examination's integrity rules. This constitutes academic dishonesty, undermining the validity of the assessment and creating an unfair playing field for other candidates. Such an action would be a failure to comply with the specific regulatory framework governing the Quds Open University entrance exam, potentially leading to disqualification and damage to the individual's academic record. Another incorrect approach, such as attempting to share exam content with others before or during the exam, also violates the principles of academic integrity and the specific rules of the examination. This not only compromises the fairness of the current exam, but also potentially impacts future admissions processes. It demonstrates a disregard for the established protocol designed to ensure a standardized and equitable evaluation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough understanding of all examination rules and regulations. Before commencing the exam, candidates must internalize these guidelines. During the exam, if faced with uncertainty or a temptation to deviate, the professional approach is to pause, recall the established rules, and proceed strictly within their boundaries. If there is any ambiguity, seeking clarification from invigilators, if permitted by the rules, or choosing the most conservative, rule-abiding path is paramount. The overarching principle is to prioritize integrity and compliance over perceived short-term gains. Question 3. System analysis indicates that during the Quds Open University entrance examination administration, a faculty member observes a candidate exhibiting signs of distress and appearing to struggle significantly with a particular section of the exam. The faculty member is aware that this candidate is from a prominent local family and that filling the allocated program seats is a high priority for the university administration this academic year. The faculty member is considering whether to offer subtle, non-verbal cues of assistance to help the candidate complete the section, believing this might improve their overall score and contribute to filling a seat. Option A. Strictly adhere to the Quds Open University's examination regulations, ensuring no candidate receives any form of assistance or preferential treatment during the examination, and report any observed irregularities to the examination proctor or supervisor. Option B. Advise the candidate after the examination on specific topics they struggled with, offering to provide additional study materials to help them in future academic endeavors, without directly impacting their current exam score. Option C. Allow the candidate to take a short, unscheduled break to compose themselves, suggesting they might perform better upon returning, even though this deviates from the standard examination time limits. Option D. Discreetly provide subtle, non-verbal cues to the struggling candidate to help them navigate the difficult section, rationalizing that it will improve their score and assist in filling a program seat. The correct answer is A. Strictly adhere to the Quds Open University's examination regulations, ensuring no candidate receives any form of assistance or preferential treatment during the examination, and report any observed irregularities to the examination proctor or supervisor. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's administrative needs and the ethical obligation to maintain academic integrity and fairness in the entrance examination process. The pressure to fill limited spots can lead to compromises that undermine the validity of the assessment. Careful judgment is required to balance institutional goals with regulatory compliance and ethical standards. The correct approach involves strictly adhering to the established examination regulations and guidelines set forth by Quds Open University for its entrance exams. This means ensuring all candidates are assessed based on the same criteria, without any preferential treatment or deviation from the approved examination procedures. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant as it upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity, which are fundamental to any educational institution's admission process and are likely enshrined in the university's internal regulations and potentially broader educational laws governing higher education in Palestine. An incorrect approach that involves overlooking minor procedural irregularities for candidates who are otherwise academically strong is ethically flawed, because it introduces bias and undermines the principle of equal treatment. This could violate specific clauses within Quds Open University's examination regulations that mandate strict adherence to procedures for all candidates, regardless of perceived academic merit. Another incorrect approach, such as allowing a candidate to submit incomplete documentation after the deadline due to a personal connection, represents a clear breach of administrative fairness and likely violates university policies on application submission and processing. This creates an unfair advantage and erodes trust in the admission process. A third incorrect approach, prioritizing the filling of quotas over the integrity of the examination process by accepting candidates who do not meet the minimum academic standards based on their exam performance, directly contravenes the purpose of an entrance examination, which is to assess a candidate's readiness for higher education. This would be a violation of the university's academic standards and admission criteria, as well as potentially broader regulations governing the quality of higher education. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to the established regulatory framework, laws, and guidelines of Quds Open University. This involves understanding the specific rules governing the entrance examination, assessing the situation against these rules, and making decisions that uphold fairness, integrity, and compliance. When faced with pressure or conflicting demands, the professional should always refer back to the official documentation and seek clarification from the appropriate university authorities if ambiguity exists, rather than making ad hoc decisions that could compromise the integrity of the process. Question 4. Operational review demonstrates a pattern of minor, but consistent, deviations from standard examination protocol by a specific invigilator during the Quds Open University entrance exam, including allowing candidates brief, unauthorized glances at their notes. The invigilator appears to be doing this to alleviate candidate anxiety. Which of the following actions best upholds the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines of Quds Open University concerning examination integrity? Option A. Overlook the minor deviations, assuming the invigilator's intentions are benevolent and the impact on overall exam fairness is negligible. Option B. Immediately report the observed deviations to the Examination Oversight Committee, providing a detailed account of the invigilator's actions and the potential impact on exam fairness. Option C. Discreetly inform the invigilator that their actions are not in line with university policy and advise them to cease immediately, without formal reporting. Option D. Attempt to subtly adjust the scoring of candidates who may have benefited from the invigilator's actions to compensate for the unfair advantage. The correct answer is B. Immediately report the observed deviations to the Examination Oversight Committee, providing a detailed account of the invigilator's actions and the potential impact on exam fairness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the potential conflict between a university's operational needs and the ethical obligations of its staff regarding the integrity of its entrance examination process. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring fairness, transparency, and adherence to the Quds Open University's established examination regulations, which are paramount for maintaining the credibility of the institution and the validity of its admissions. The correct approach involves a direct and transparent reporting of the observed irregularities to the designated Examination Oversight Committee, or relevant academic authority within Quds Open University. This aligns with the university's internal regulations and ethical guidelines, which mandate reporting of any suspected breaches of examination integrity. Such reporting ensures that the university can investigate the matter thoroughly, uphold its standards, and take appropriate corrective actions, thereby safeguarding the fairness of the entrance exam for all candidates. This approach prioritizes regulatory compliance and ethical conduct over personal convenience or the avoidance of potential conflict. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring the irregularities or attempting to address them informally without proper documentation or reporting fails to uphold the university's examination regulations. This inaction could be interpreted as complicity or negligence, undermining the integrity of the entire admissions process and potentially leading to unfair outcomes for other applicants. Another incorrect approach, such as directly confronting the individuals involved without following established university procedures, could escalate the situation unnecessarily, lead to defensiveness, and potentially compromise any subsequent investigation. Bypasses the formal channels designed to handle such sensitive matters, risking procedural errors and a less effective resolution. A further incorrect approach, which might involve discreetly altering the examination materials or procedures to compensate for the observed issues without official sanction, is highly unethical and a direct violation of examination protocols. This constitutes tampering with the examination process, which is a severe breach of trust and academic integrity and would likely have significant repercussions if discovered. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Recognizing and documenting the observed irregularities objectively. 2. Consulting the relevant Quds open university examination regulations and ethical codes of conduct. 3. Identifying the appropriate internal authority or committee responsible for examination integrity. 4. Formally reporting the observed issues through the established channels, providing clear and factual information. 5. Cooperating fully with any subsequent investigation. Question 5. The control framework reveals that Quds open university entrance examinations are designed to assess individual merit and knowledge. During the examination, a candidate discovers a small, pre-written note containing formulas that could be beneficial for a specific section of the exam. The candidate is aware that possessing and using such unauthorized materials is strictly prohibited by the university's examination regulations. Which of the following actions best upholds the principles of academic integrity and regulatory compliance as expected by Quds Open University? Option A. Immediately and discreetly inform the examination invigilator about the presence of the note and surrender it. Option B. Ignore the note and proceed with answering the exam based on personal knowledge, but keep the note for future reference. Option C. Attempt to share the information from the note with a nearby candidate who appears to be struggling. Option D. Discreetly use the note to answer the questions, as it is a small advantage and unlikely to be detected. The correct answer is D. Discreetly use the note to answer the questions, as it is a small advantage and unlikely to be detected. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to achieve a high score and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to succeed in a university entrance exam, especially in a competitive environment, can lead individuals to consider unethical shortcuts. The control framework of Quds Open University, like any reputable institution, is designed to uphold these principles through clear regulations and guidelines. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the examination rules and regulations as stipulated by Quds Open University. This means refraining from any form of academic dishonesty, including the use of unauthorized materials or seeking external assistance. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant with the university's academic policies, which are designed to ensure a fair and equitable assessment of all candidates' knowledge and abilities. Upholding these regulations is paramount to maintaining the credibility of the examination process and the value of the degrees awarded by the university. An incorrect approach would be to attempt to access or use unauthorized study materials during the examination. This directly violates the examination rules and constitutes academic misconduct. Such an action undermines the integrity of the assessment process, devalues the achievements of honest candidates, and can lead to severe penalties, including disqualification from the exam and potential blacklisting from future academic pursuits. Another incorrect approach would be to collude with other candidates or external parties to gain an unfair advantage. This is a form of cheating that violates the principles of individual merit and fair competition. It not only breaches university regulations, but also demonstrates a lack of personal integrity and respect for the academic process. The consequences for such actions are typically severe, reflecting the university's zero-tolerance policy towards collusion. A further incorrect approach would be to misrepresent one's identity or qualifications to gain entry to the examination or to obtain an unfair advantage. This is a serious form of deception that goes against the fundamental principles of honesty and transparency expected of all individuals interacting with the university. It can lead to immediate disqualification and potential legal repercussions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations requires a clear understanding of the relevant university regulations and ethical codes. Candidates must prioritize honesty, integrity, and adherence to rules. When faced with pressure or temptation, they should reflect on the long-term consequences of their actions and the importance of earning academic success through legitimate means. Consulting university guidelines or seeking clarification from examination proctors are proactive steps to ensure compliance. Question 6. Operational review demonstrates that a significant number of prospective students for the Quds Open University Entrance Exam are facing challenges accessing the required preparatory materials due to unforeseen logistical issues. The admissions department is considering implementing a temporary, informal system to distribute these materials through unofficial channels to ensure these students can still participate in the exam. Which of the following actions best aligns with the regulatory framework for Quds Open University Entrance Examinations? Option A. Conduct a thorough review of Quds Open University's official regulations concerning examination preparation and material distribution, and if necessary, formally propose and seek approval for any necessary adjustments to the admissions committee and relevant academic departments. Option B. Rely on faculty members to informally disseminate the preparatory materials to students they know are facing difficulties, trusting their discretion. Option C. Immediately implement the informal distribution system to ensure all prospective students have access to materials, prioritizing student participation. Option D. Advise students to find alternative, unofficial sources for preparatory materials, as the university cannot guarantee access through official channels at this time. The correct answer is C. Immediately implement the informal distribution system to ensure all prospective students have access to materials, prioritizing student participation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's operational needs and the strict adherence to academic integrity and regulatory compliance, specifically as it pertains to the Quds Open University Entrance Exam framework. The core difficulty lies in balancing the desire to facilitate student access with the imperative to maintain the validity and fairness of the entrance examination process. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any adjustments do not compromise the integrity of the exam or violate established university regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough review of existing Quds Open University regulations concerning examination procedures and student admissions. This approach prioritizes understanding the specific legal and regulatory framework governing the entrance exam, identifying any provisions that might permit or prohibit the proposed adjustments. It then necessitates seeking formal approval from the relevant university academic and administrative bodies, ensuring that any changes are documented, transparent, and aligned with the university's mission and regulatory obligations. This upholds academic integrity by ensuring that all admissions processes are fair, equitable, and compliant with the established rules, thereby protecting the reputation and credibility of Quds Open University. An incorrect approach that proposes immediate implementation of the proposed changes without consulting the regulatory framework or seeking formal approval fails to acknowledge the binding nature of university regulations. This bypasses established governance structures and risks contravening specific rules designed to ensure fairness and prevent malfeasance in the admissions process. Another incorrect approach that suggests relying solely on informal discussions with faculty members without formal documentation or approval is equally problematic. This lacks the necessary accountability and transparency, potentially leading to inconsistent application of policies and creating grounds for future disputes or challenges to the admission process. A third incorrect approach that focuses on expediency over compliance, by suggesting a workaround that circumvents established procedures, directly undermines the principles of regulatory adherence and academic integrity. This can lead to accusations of favoritism or unfairness, damaging the university's standing. Professionals in such situation should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of the applicable regulatory environment. This involves identifying all relevant university policies, guidelines, and any external regulations that govern admissions and examinations. The next step is to assess the proposed action against these regulations, determining its permissibility and potential implications. If the proposed action appears to conflict with or fall outside the scope of existing regulations, the professional should then initiate a process for seeking clarification or formal approval from the appropriate university authorities. This process should be documented, and any approved changes should be clearly communicated to all relevant stakeholders. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are not only operationally efficient, but also legally sound and ethically defensible, safeguarding the integrity of the institution. Question 7. Operational review demonstrates that the admissions committee at Quds Open University is facing significant pressure to meet its enrollment targets for the upcoming academic year. A proposal has been made to streamline the admissions process by prioritizing applicants who have demonstrated strong potential for future financial contributions to the university, alongside a less rigorous academic qualification check for these individuals. Which of the following approaches best upholds the principles of fair and compliant admissions at Quds Open University? Option A. Implement a tiered review system where applicants are first assessed for their academic qualifications according to established criteria, and then, for those who meet the minimum academic threshold, their potential for future contributions is considered as a secondary factor, ensuring all admissions are ultimately based on meeting defined academic standards. Option B. Allow the admissions committee to exercise greater discretion in waiving certain academic requirements for applicants who appear to be strong candidates, particularly if they are from backgrounds that could enhance the university's diversity or network. Option C. Focus on admitting applicants who can demonstrate immediate financial capacity to cover tuition fees and other university expenses, as this directly supports the university's operational sustainability and allows for a larger intake of students. Option D. Expedite the review of applications from individuals who have been informally recommended by influential figures within the community, allowing for a less stringent verification of their academic credentials to ensure their timely admission. The correct answer is A. Implement a tiered review system where applicants are first assessed for their academic qualifications according to established criteria, and then, for those who meet the minimum academic threshold, their potential for future contributions is considered as a secondary factor, ensuring all admissions are ultimately based on meeting defined academic standards. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's operational needs and the ethical imperative to maintain academic integrity and fair admission processes. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create an environment where shortcuts or compromises in the admissions process might be considered, jeopardizing the credibility of Quds Open University. Careful judgment is required to navigate this pressure, while upholding the university's commitment to merit-based admissions and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective review of all applicant documentation, ensuring that all admissions criteria, as defined by Quds Open University's internal regulations and any relevant Ministry of Higher Education guidelines, are consistently applied. This approach prioritizes fairness, transparency, and adherence to established procedures. It aligns with the ethical principles of academic institutions to admit students based on their qualifications and potential, rather than external pressures or subjective biases. Specifically, it upholds the university's responsibility to maintain the quality and reputation of its academic programs by selecting qualified candidates, an incorrect approach that involves prioritizing applicants based on their perceived ability to contribute financially to the university, without a comprehensive assessment of their academic qualifications, represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This deviates from the core purpose of an educational institution and undermines the principle of equal opportunity for all prospective students. It could also violate Quds Open University's own admission policies and potentially any overarching regulations from the Ministry of Higher Education regarding fair admissions. Another incorrect approach, which involves expediting the review process for certain applicants based on informal recommendations or personal connections, introduces bias and compromises the integrity of the admission system. This practice is ethically unsound as it creates an uneven playing field and can lead to the admission of less qualified candidates over more deserving ones. It also risks violating university policies on impartiality and could be seen as a form of preferential treatment, which is unacceptable in a meritocratic admission process. Furthermore, an incorrect approach that involves overlooking minor discrepancies in applicant documentation to meet enrollment targets demonstrates a disregard for established procedures and a willingness to compromise standards. While seemingly pragmatic in the short term, this practice erodes the reliability of the admissions process and can lead to the admission of students who may not be adequately prepared for university-level study, ultimately impacting academic outcomes and the university's reputation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of Quds Open University's admission policies and any applicable national higher education regulations. Professionals must prioritize adherence to these guidelines, ensuring that all decisions are objective, fair, and transparent. When faced with pressure to deviate from established procedures, it is crucial to advocate for the integrity of the process, seeking clarification or guidance from supervisors or relevant committees if necessary. The ultimate goal is to uphold the university's commitment to academic excellence and equitable access to education. Question 8. Upon reviewing the preparatory materials for the Quds Open University entrance exam, a candidate approaches you, a university staff member, and asks for specific details about the types of questions that will appear in the upcoming examination, stating they are feeling very anxious and need to focus their last-minute revision. Option A. Provide a broad overview of the subject areas covered by the exam, without disclosing specific question formats or topics. Option B. Suggest the candidate focus on the official syllabus and past papers provided by the university for their preparation. Option C. Offer general advice on study techniques and time management without revealing any exam content. Option D. Politely decline the request, explaining that providing any information about the specific content of the entrance exam would compromise its integrity and is against university policy. The correct answer is D. Politely decline the request, explaining that providing any information about the specific content of the entrance exam would compromise its integrity and is against university policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire to access information and the university's responsibility to maintain academic integrity and protect its resources. The entrance exam's regulatory framework, specific to Quds Open University, mandates strict adherence to rules designed to ensure a fair and equitable assessment process. Navigating this requires a deep understanding of the university's policies on academic misconduct and the ethical obligations of individuals involved in the examination process. The correct approach involves upholding the integrity of the examination by refusing to provide any information that could compromise its fairness. This aligns with the Quds Open University's entrance exam regulations, which implicitly or explicitly prohibit any form of cheating or unauthorized assistance. Ethically, this demonstrates a commitment to fairness, honesty, and the principle of equal opportunity for all candidates. It protects the value of the qualification awarded by the university, providing the student with any details about the exam questions, even seemingly minor ones, constitutes a regulatory and ethical failure. This action directly violates the principles of academic integrity and fair assessment. It would create an unfair advantage for the student, undermining the efforts of other candidates who have prepared through legitimate means. Such an act could be construed as aiding and abetting academic misconduct, leading to disciplinary action for the individual providing the information and potentially invalidating the student's application. A professional decision-making process in such situations should involve 1. Identifying the core issue, recognizing the request as a potential breach of academic integrity. 2. Consulting relevant regulations, referencing Quds Open University-specific entrance exam guidelines and policies on academic conduct. 3. Prioritizing integrity, making a decision that unequivocally upholds the fairness and validity of the examination process. 4. Communicating clearly and professionally, responding to the student in a manner that is firm but respectful, explaining the inability to fulfill the request due to examination regulations. 5. Escalating if necessary. If the student persists or the situation is unclear, seeking guidance from the appropriate university authority. Question 9. The efficiency study reveals that the current admissions process at Quds Open University is time-consuming and resource-intensive. To streamline operations and reduce costs, a proposal is made to significantly shorten the essay review period for all applicants, focusing primarily on the word count and basic grammar checks, with minimal substantive content analysis, which approach best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for university admissions. Option A. Reduce the essay review period by only checking for word count and basic grammar, deeming the content analysis to be a secondary concern that can be expedited to meet efficiency targets. Option B. Implement a revised essay review process that incorporates automated preliminary checks for word count and grammar, followed by a more focused, but still comprehensive, qualitative assessment by experienced admissions officers, ensuring that efficiency gains do not compromise the depth of applicant evaluation. Option C. Introduce a system where essay content is only reviewed if an applicant's initial scores meet a very high threshold, thereby limiting the number of essays requiring in-depth analysis. Option D. Delegate the entire essay review process to an external vendor with a strict turnaround time, without establishing clear quality control mechanisms for their content evaluation. The correct answer is B. Implement a revised essay review process that incorporates automated preliminary checks for word count and grammar, followed by a more focused, but still comprehensive, qualitative assessment by experienced admissions officers, ensuring that efficiency gains do not compromise the depth of applicant evaluation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's operational efficiency goals with the fundamental principles of academic integrity and fair admission processes, all within the specific regulatory framework of Quds Open University. The pressure to demonstrate efficiency can inadvertently lead to compromises that undermine the quality and fairness of admissions. Careful judgment is required to ensure that efficiency measures do not violate established academic standards or create an inequitable experience for prospective students. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the existing admission criteria and processes to identify areas for improvement that enhance efficiency without compromising fairness or academic rigor. This includes consulting with relevant academic departments and administrative bodies to understand the impact of any proposed changes. The justification for this approach lies in adhering to the Quds Open University's established academic policies and admission regulations, which are designed to ensure that all applicants are assessed on merit and suitability for their chosen programs. This upholds the university's commitment to providing quality education and maintaining its reputation. An incorrect approach that prioritizes speed over thoroughness in reviewing admission criteria would fail to adequately assess the potential impact of changes on academic standards. This could lead to the adoption of superficial efficiency measures that do not genuinely improve the admissions process, but might inadvertently exclude deserving candidates or admit underqualified ones, violating the principle of fair assessment. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on reducing the number of application processing steps without considering the qualitative aspects of applicant evaluation would be ethically unsound. This would disregard the importance of a comprehensive assessment of each applicant's qualifications and potential, potentially leading to a less qualified student body and undermining the university's educational mission. A further incorrect approach that involves implementing automated screening tools without human oversight or validation would be problematic. While automation can increase efficiency, relying on it exclusively without ensuring its accuracy and fairness could introduce biases or overlook nuances in applicant profiles, leading to discriminatory outcomes and a failure to uphold the university's commitment to equitable admissions. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the core objectives of the efficiency study and then systematically evaluates proposed changes against the university's mission. Academic policies and admission regulations. This involves a consultative process, risk assessment, and a commitment to maintaining the integrity of the admissions process, ensuring that efficiency gains do not come at the expense of fairness and academic quality. Question 10. The assessment process reveals that an applicant for the Quds Open University Entrance Exam is a close acquaintance of the admissions officer. The applicant's academic record meets the minimum requirements, but there are areas where other candidates appear stronger. The admissions officer is aware of the applicant's personal circumstances, which might evoke sympathy. How should the admissions officer proceed to ensure compliance with university regulations and ethical standards? Option A. Give the applicant the benefit of the doubt in borderline cases, considering the personal acquaintance and circumstances to ensure a fair outcome. Option B. Inform the applicant that their personal circumstances might be considered favorably due to the acquaintance, encouraging them to highlight these aspects. Option C. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published admission criteria, without any consideration for the personal acquaintance or circumstances, and document the evaluation process thoroughly. Option D. Decline to assess the applicant and pass the file to another officer without disclosing the personal acquaintance, hoping the issue resolves itself. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the applicant strictly based on the published admission criteria, without any consideration for the personal acquaintance or circumstances, and document the evaluation process thoroughly. Explanation. The assessment process for the Quds Open University Entrance Exam requires candidates to demonstrate a thorough understanding of the university's admission regulations and ethical conduct expectations. This scenario is professionally challenging because it tests the candidate's ability to navigate a situation where personal bias could influence objective evaluation, directly conflicting with the principles of fairness and meritocracy that underpin university admissions. The pressure to admit a candidate based on personal connection, rather than strict adherence to established criteria, creates an ethical dilemma. The correct approach involves a commitment to the established Quds Open University admission regulations. This means evaluating all candidates, including the applicant known to the assessor, solely based on the objective criteria outlined in the university's official admission policy. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it upholds the principle of equal opportunity and ensures that admission decisions are merit-based, preventing favoritism and maintaining the integrity of the academic institution. Adhering to the documented admission criteria is paramount and directly aligns with the university's commitment to fair and transparent selection processes. An incorrect approach would be to allow the personal relationship to influence the assessment. This could manifest as overlooking minor deficiencies in the applicant's qualifications or giving undue weight to aspects that are not explicitly part of the admission criteria. Such an approach constitutes a failure to comply with the university's admission regulations, which are designed to ensure a standardized and equitable evaluation process for all applicants. Ethically, it represents a breach of professional integrity and a conflict of interest, as it prioritizes personal connections over objective merit. Another incorrect approach would be to avoid assessing the applicant altogether due to the personal connection, without properly escalating the situation. While avoiding a conflict of interest is a good intention, simply disengaging without informing the relevant authorities or seeking guidance from the admissions committee can lead to delays or a lack of proper evaluation, potentially disadvantaging the applicant or the university. This demonstrates a lack of proactive problem-solving and adherence to established procedures for managing conflicts of interest within an institutional setting. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the university's admission policies and ethical guidelines. When a potential conflict of interest arises, the professional should first identify the conflict. Then, they should consult the relevant policies and procedures for handling such situations. If the policy is unclear or the situation is complex, seeking guidance from a supervisor or the admissions committee is crucial. The ultimate goal is to ensure that all decisions are made transparently, fairly, and in strict accordance with the established regulations, thereby safeguarding the integrity of the university's admission process. Question 11. Examination of the data shows a discrepancy in the reported number of applicants for the Quds Open University Entrance Exam compared to the initial registration figures. The admissions committee requires an immediate, detailed breakdown of applicant demographics to assess potential enrollment trends for strategic planning. Option A. Cross-reference the reported applicant numbers with original application forms and supporting documents, ensuring all data shared externally is anonymized and compliant with Quds Open University's data privacy policy. Option B. Share the detailed applicant demographic data directly with the admissions committee, assuming they will handle the information responsibly and maintain confidentiality. Option C. Inform the admissions committee that the data is currently unreliable and suggest they proceed with their planning based on the initial registration figures. Without further investigation, Option D. Immediately provide the admissions committee with the raw, unverified applicant demographic data as requested to facilitate their urgent planning needs. The correct answer is A. Cross-reference the reported applicant numbers with original application forms and supporting documents, ensuring all data shared externally is anonymized and compliant with Quds Open University's data privacy policy. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for enrollment data and the ethical obligation to protect student privacy and ensure data accuracy. The entrance exam context amplifies this challenge, as decisions made here can significantly impact prospective students' futures and the university's reputation. Careful judgment is required to balance administrative efficiency with regulatory compliance and ethical data handling. The correct approach involves a multifaceted strategy that prioritizes data integrity and compliance with Quds Open University's internal regulations and any applicable Palestinian data protection laws. This approach would involve verifying the accuracy of the data through cross-referencing with original application documents and ensuring that any data shared externally adheres strictly to privacy protocols, anonymizing sensitive information where necessary, and obtaining explicit consent for any non-standard data usage. This aligns with the ethical principles of data stewardship and the regulatory requirement to handle personal information responsibly. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate data extraction without verification risks disseminating inaccurate information, which could lead to incorrect admissions decisions and harm to applicants. This violates the principle of data accuracy and could have serious ethical and potentially legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach that involves sharing raw, unverified, or sensitive student data without proper anonymization or consent directly contravenes privacy regulations and ethical standards, exposing the university to significant risks of data breaches and loss of trust. A third incorrect approach that delays data processing indefinitely without a clear plan for verification and secure handling would hinder the university's operational efficiency and potentially disadvantage applicants by delaying admission decisions, failing to meet the reasonable expectations of the entrance exam process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying the core objective, data for enrollment, then assesses the available data against established university policies and relevant legal frameworks. This involves a risk assessment of potential data inaccuracies and privacy breaches. The next step is to identify the most compliant and ethical methods for achieving the objective, which may involve implementing data validation procedures, seeking necessary approvals for data access, and ensuring appropriate data anonymization or aggregation techniques are used. Continuous monitoring and adherence to established protocols are crucial throughout the process. Question 12. Assessment of an applicant's eligibility for the Quds Open University entrance examination based on their submitted academic records and personal statement, ensuring adherence to the university's published admission criteria and the principles of equitable access. Option A. Focusing primarily on the applicant's financial background and ability to pay tuition fees as a significant factor in the admission decision. Option B. Prioritizing the applicant based on their perceived potential for future success, even if some of their submitted academic records do not fully meet the minimum stated requirements. Option C. Evaluating the applicant's submitted academic records and personal statement against the university's published admission criteria and ensuring all documentation aligns with the stated requirements for equitable access. Option D. Granting admission based on recommendations from influential community members, irrespective of whether the applicant meets all formal admission criteria. The correct answer is C. evaluating the applicant's submitted academic records and personal statement against the university's published admission criteria, and ensuring all documentation aligns with the stated requirements for equitable access. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the foundational principles governing university admissions, specifically as they relate to fairness and the integrity of the entrance examination process. The challenge lies in identifying the approach that best upholds these principles within the context of Quds, Open University's regulatory framework, which prioritizes equitable access and transparent evaluation. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the applicant's submitted documentation against the established admission criteria and the university's stated policies. This is ethically and regulatorily sound because it adheres to the principle of equal opportunity by ensuring all applicants are assessed based on the same objective standards. It aligns with the university's commitment to transparency and fairness, as outlined in its admission guidelines, by preventing arbitrary decisions and ensuring that the selection process is defensible and accountable. This method upholds the integrity of the entrance examination by focusing on the applicant's qualifications and suitability as defined by the university. An incorrect approach that relies solely on the applicant's perceived potential or a subjective assessment of their background, without rigorous adherence to documented criteria, fails to meet regulatory requirements for fair assessment. This could lead to accusations of bias or favoritism, undermining the university's reputation and potentially violating its own admission policies. Another incorrect approach that involves prioritizing applicants based on external affiliations or recommendations not explicitly part of the admission criteria, introduces an element of arbitrariness and inequity. This directly contravenes the principle of merit-based selection and the university's commitment to a transparent and objective admissions process. Such a method would be ethically questionable and could lead to regulatory scrutiny for failing to apply established admission standards uniformly. Professionals in university admissions should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the university's admission regulations and policies. This involves meticulously evaluating each applicant's submission against these predefined criteria. When faced with ambiguity or unusual circumstances, the framework dictates seeking clarification from relevant university departments or committees responsible for admissions policy, rather than making subjective judgments. The ultimate goal is to ensure that every decision is grounded in established rules, promotes fairness, and maintains the integrity of the academic institution. Question 13. Which approach would be most appropriate for an applicant encountering an ambiguous instruction during the Quds Open University entrance exam, aiming to uphold academic integrity and comply with examination regulations? Option A. Discreetly attempt to observe how other candidates are interpreting and answering the ambiguous instruction. Option B. Politely and discreetly approach the invigilator to seek clarification on the ambiguous instruction before proceeding. Option C. Ignore the ambiguous instruction and skip the question, hoping it does not impact the overall score significantly. Option D. Assume the most favorable interpretation of the instruction and answer the question accordingly. Correct answer is B. Politely and discreetly approach the invigilator to seek clarification on the ambiguous instruction before proceeding. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the ethical and regulatory principles governing academic integrity at Quds Open University, specifically in the context of an entrance examination. The challenge lies in identifying the most appropriate course of action when faced with a situation that could be interpreted as a breach of examination rules, balancing the need for honesty with the desire to succeed. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any action taken aligns with the university's stated commitment to fairness and academic rigor. The correct approach involves proactively seeking clarification from the invigilator regarding the perceived ambiguity in the examination instructions. This demonstrates a commitment to adhering to the rules as intended by the university and avoids any potential misinterpretation or accusation of misconduct. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant, as it prioritizes transparency and adherence to established examination protocols. It aligns with the principles of academic integrity by ensuring that the applicant is not gaining an unfair advantage and is participating in a fair assessment process. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with an assumption about the ambiguous instruction without seeking clarification. This could lead to an unintentional violation of examination rules, potentially resulting in disqualification or other disciplinary actions. It fails to uphold the principle of academic honesty and demonstrates a lack of diligence in understanding and following instructions, which is a fundamental expectation for all university students. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the ambiguity and complete the question based on personal interpretation without any attempt to verify the correct procedure. This shows a disregard for the examination's integrity and the university's regulations. It suggests a willingness to take risks that could compromise the validity of the examination results and the applicant's standing. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to attempt to discreetly seek assistance from another candidate. This is a direct violation of examination rules and constitutes academic dishonesty. It undermines the fairness of the examination process for all candidates and demonstrates a severe lack of ethical judgment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a clear hierarchy of actions. First, attempt to understand all instructions thoroughly. Second, if ambiguity persists, seek immediate clarification from the designated authority, in this case, the invigilator. Third, if clarification is not possible or satisfactory, proceed with caution, erring on the side of adherence to the most conservative interpretation of the rules, and document the ambiguity and the steps taken. And fourth, never engage in any action that could be construed as dishonest or unfair. Question 14. Implementation of examination protocols requires invigilators to manage student conduct. During an entrance exam at Quds Open University, an invigilator observes a student looking intently at their hands, which are resting on their lap, and then glancing towards another student's paper. The invigilator suspects potential academic dishonesty. What is the most appropriate immediate action for the invigilator to take? Option A. Discreetly signal to the student to look at their own paper, implying that their current behavior is noticeable. Option B. Politely and discreetly approach the student and remind them of the examination rules regarding looking at other students' papers and the importance of maintaining academic integrity. Option C. Immediately confiscate the student's exam paper and escort them out of the examination hall to be dealt with by the disciplinary committee. Option D. Continue to monitor the student from a distance, assuming the student might be experiencing anxiety and not engaging in cheating. The correct answer is B. Politely and discreetly approach the student and remind them of the examination rules regarding looking at other students' papers and the importance of maintaining academic integrity. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's immediate academic needs and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The pressure to perform well on an entrance exam can lead students to consider unethical shortcuts. The university, represented by the invigilator, has a duty to uphold the integrity of the examination process, ensuring a level playing field for all applicants. This requires careful judgment to balance support for students with the strict enforcement of rules. The correct approach involves politely but firmly reminding the student of the examination rules and the consequences of academic dishonesty, without directly accusing them or making assumptions. This upholds the principle of academic integrity, which is a cornerstone of any educational institution. By adhering to established examination protocols and focusing on the rules rather than personal judgment of the student's intent, the invigilator acts in accordance with the Quds Open University's commitment to fair and honest evaluation. This approach also respects the student's dignity while safeguarding the examination's validity. An incorrect approach that involves immediately reporting the student to the authorities without any attempt at clarification or gentle reminder risks an unfair accusation and can create unnecessary distress for the student. This fails to acknowledge that the student might have been seeking clarification or assistance within acceptable boundaries, and it bypasses the opportunity for a less severe resolution if the student's actions were unintentional. Another incorrect approach, which is to ignore the student's behavior, is ethically unacceptable. This dereliction of duty undermines the integrity of the examination process and creates an unfair advantage for the student in question, potentially disadvantaging other honest applicants. It also fails to uphold the university's responsibility to maintain academic standards. A further incorrect approach, which is to offer the student a hint or subtle assistance, directly violates the principles of fair assessment and academic honesty. This constitutes aiding and abetting academic misconduct, compromising the validity of the examination and the university's reputation. Professionals in such situations should follow a decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to established rules and regulations. This involves 1. Observing the situation and identifying potential rule violations. 2. Recalling the specific rules and guidelines governing the situation. In this case, examination conduct. 3. Intervening in a manner that is consistent with the rules, which may involve a polite reminder or a more formal procedure depending on the severity and clarity of the violation. 4. Documenting the incident and the action taken if necessary. 5. Seeking guidance from supervisors or relevant university departments if the situation is ambiguous or requires escalation. The focus should always be on maintaining fairness and integrity. Question 15. Risk assessment procedures indicate that during a crucial university entrance examination, a student discreetly signals to the invigilator, appearing distressed and mouthing the words, "I don't know this question." The invigilator is aware that providing any form of assistance, even a subtle hint, would compromise the integrity of the examination process and violate university regulations. What is the most appropriate course of action for the invigilator in this situation? Option A. Politely and firmly inform the student that no assistance can be provided as it would violate exam regulations, and then discreetly monitor the student's behavior. Option B. Publicly admonish the student for attempting to solicit help, causing a scene to deter others. Option C. Ignore the student's signal and continue with general supervision, hoping the student will figure it out independently. Option D. Provide a subtle hint to the student to help them answer the question, believing it is a minor act of compassion. The correct answer is A. Politely and firmly inform the student that no assistance can be provided as it would violate exam regulations, and then discreetly monitor the student's behavior. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived need for assistance and the university's academic integrity policies. The pressure of entrance exams can lead students to seek unfair advantages, and the role of the invigilator is to uphold fairness and prevent such actions. Careful judgment is required to balance empathy with strict adherence to regulations. The correct approach involves politely but firmly refusing the student's request and explaining that such actions would violate exam regulations. This upholds the principle of academic integrity, ensuring a fair testing environment for all candidates. Specifically, it aligns with the Quds Open University's commitment to fair assessment practices, which are fundamental to the credibility of its entrance examinations. The invigilator's duty is to maintain the integrity of the exam process, and assisting a student in any way that could be construed as providing an unfair advantage is a direct contravention of this duty. An incorrect approach would be to provide the student with any form of assistance, such as hints or direct answers. This action directly violates the principles of academic honesty and fairness. It undermines the validity of the examination process and creates an inequitable situation for other students who have prepared diligently. Such an action would be a breach of the invigilator's professional responsibilities and could lead to disciplinary action by the university. Another incorrect approach would be to ignore the student's request and continue with the exam without addressing the situation. This inaction fails to uphold the invigilator's duty to ensure exam integrity. It implicitly condones the student's attempt to gain an unfair advantage and can create an environment where such behavior is perceived as acceptable. This passive stance is a dereliction of professional duty. A further incorrect approach would be to confront the student aggressively or publicly shame them. While the student's request is inappropriate, the invigilator's response should be professional and de-escalating. Public humiliation can be counterproductive and may lead to further disruption. The focus should remain on maintaining the order and fairness of the examination environment. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves 1. Recognize the ethical conflict. Identify the tension between student needs and institutional integrity. 2. Consult the rules. Be thoroughly familiar with the Quds Open University's examination regulations regarding academic integrity and invigilator responsibilities. 3. Prioritize fairness and integrity. The paramount consideration is to ensure a fair and unbiased examination for all candidates. 4. Communicate clearly and professionally. Address the situation directly, politely, and firmly, explaining the relevant rules. 5. Maintain composure. Respond calmly and avoid emotional reactions. 6. Document the incident. If necessary, record the interaction for reporting purposes. Question 16. During the evaluation of an applicant's entrance exam performance, the admissions committee member discovers that the applicant, who is otherwise qualified, experienced a significant personal emergency on the day of the exam, which they claim directly impacted their ability to perform optimally. The applicant has provided some documentation, but requests a special review of their application, citing extenuating circumstances. The committee member is aware of the university's strict policy against grade inflation or preferential treatment in admissions. What is the most ethically and regulatorily appropriate course of action for the committee member? Option A. Advise the applicant that university policy strictly prohibits any exceptions to the entrance exam evaluation process, regardless of personal circumstances, and proceed with the standard evaluation. Option B. Suggest the applicant reapply for the next admission cycle, allowing them time to recover from their personal emergency and demonstrate their academic potential under normal circumstances. Option C. Grant the applicant a conditional admission based on their stated personal emergency, with the understanding that they will need to meet higher academic standards in their first year. Option D. Initiate a formal review process according to university policy for extenuating circumstances, ensuring all documentation is verified, and the case is assessed impartially against established criteria. The correct answer is D. Initiate a formal review process according to university policy for extenuating circumstances, ensuring all documentation is verified, and the case is assessed impartially against established criteria. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the conflict between a student's personal circumstances and the university's established academic integrity policies. The evaluator must balance empathy and support for the student with the imperative to uphold the fairness and credibility of the entrance examination process. The core of the dilemma lies in determining whether to grant an exception that could be perceived as preferential treatment, potentially undermining the equal opportunity principle for all applicants. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation of the student's claims, adhering strictly to Quds Open University's established procedures for handling special circumstances. This approach is ethically sound and regulatorily compliant because it prioritizes fairness, transparency, and due process. By following established protocols, the evaluator ensures that any decision is based on objective evidence and university policy, rather than personal bias or pressure. This upholds the integrity of the entrance examination and maintains public trust in the university's admissions process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately grant the student an exception based solely on their stated personal hardship, without proper verification. This fails to uphold the principle of equal opportunity, as other applicants facing similar or different challenges may not receive similar concessions. It also bypasses the university's established procedures, potentially setting a precedent that could be exploited. Another incorrect approach would be to dismiss the student's concerns outright without any investigation. This demonstrates a lack of empathy and could lead to an unfair outcome if the student's circumstances are indeed legitimate and warrant consideration under university policy. Such an action could also damage the university's reputation for fairness and inclusivity. Professionals should approach such situations by first understanding and applying the relevant university policies and guidelines. This involves gathering all necessary information, conducting a fair and objective assessment of the situation, and making a decision that is consistent with established rules and ethical principles. If ambiguity exists, seeking guidance from senior colleagues or relevant university departments is a crucial step in the decision-making process. Question 17. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a particular region, facing significant socioeconomic challenges, has a lower than expected number of qualified applicants for Quds Open University programs, potentially impacting overall enrollment targets. The admissions committee is under pressure to meet these targets. One committee member suggests that to encourage applications from this region and boost enrollment, they should consider a more lenient interpretation of certain academic prerequisites for a select group of applicants from this area, provided they demonstrate a strong willingness to learn and a potential for future success. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible approach for the admissions committee to consider? Option A. Develop a targeted outreach program to support potential applicants from the region in meeting the existing admission standards, offering preparatory resources and guidance, while ensuring all admitted students still meet the university's core academic requirements. Option B. Implement a system where a portion of the admission slots are reserved for applicants from this region, regardless of their academic qualifications, to address the enrollment shortfall and demonstrate institutional commitment to inclusivity. Option C. Prioritize applicants from this region who demonstrate a strong financial capacity to contribute to the university, as this indirectly supports the university's operational needs and allows for more resources to be allocated to student support. Option D. Create a special, lower admission standard specifically for applicants from this region to ensure enrollment targets are met, focusing on their willingness to learn rather than strict adherence to prior academic qualifications. The correct answer is A. Develop a targeted outreach program to support potential applicants from the region in meeting the existing admission standards, offering preparatory resources and guidance, while ensuring all admitted students still meet the university's core academic requirements. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with the ethical obligation to uphold academic integrity and fair admission practices. The pressure to meet enrollment targets can create a conflict of interest, potentially leading to compromises that undermine the university's reputation and the value of its degrees. Careful judgment is required to navigate these competing pressures while adhering to established ethical principles and university regulations. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective assessment of all applicants based on the established admission criteria, without undue influence from enrollment targets. This upholds the principle of fairness and meritocracy, ensuring that admission decisions are based on genuine academic potential and suitability for the university's programs. Adherence to the Quds, Open University's admission policies and ethical guidelines is paramount. These likely emphasize transparency, objectivity, and the avoidance of any form of preferential treatment or bias that could compromise the integrity of the admissions process. An incorrect approach that prioritizes meeting enrollment targets by lowering admission standards for certain applicants, even if they are from a region facing challenges, would be ethically unsound and potentially violate university policies. This could be seen as a form of academic dishonesty or unfair advantage, undermining the credibility of the university and devaluing the qualifications of its students. It also fails to respect the principle of equal opportunity by creating a separate, less rigorous standard for some. Another incorrect approach, which involves selectively admitting applicants based on their perceived ability to contribute financially to the university, rather than their academic merit, is also ethically problematic. This prioritizes financial gain over academic suitability and could lead to the admission of students who are not adequately prepared for the academic rigor of the programs, potentially resulting in higher dropout rates and a decline in academic standards. This approach also risks creating an appearance of impropriety and could damage the university's reputation. A third incorrect approach, which involves creating a special admission track for applicants from specific regions without a clear, objective, and transparent rationale tied to academic preparedness or program needs, could be seen as discriminatory or as circumventing established admission procedures. While outreach to underserved regions is commendable, it must be done within a framework that maintains academic standards and fairness for all applicants. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Identifying the core ethical principles at play: fairness, integrity, objectivity, and the best interests of the university and its students. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and ethical guidelines regarding admissions and student recruitment. 3. Seeking advice from senior management or an ethics committee if the situation is complex or involves potential conflicts of interest. 4. Prioritizing objective assessment based on established criteria over external pressures or perceived benefits. 5. Documenting the decision-making process and the rationale behind any admission decisions, especially in cases that deviate from standard procedures. Question 18. Performance analysis shows a candidate for the Quds Open University Entrance Exam has demonstrated a significant dip in their scores during the final assessment phase, raising concerns about their readiness for university-level studies. As a faculty member involved in the admissions process, you are aware of this discrepancy. What is the most ethically and procedurally sound course of action? Option A. Immediately flag the candidate for disqualification based on the recent performance decline, assuming it reflects their true academic capability. Option B. Initiate a confidential review of the candidate's full assessment record with the admissions committee to determine if the performance dip is an anomaly or indicative of a larger issue, and follow established university protocols for addressing such concerns. Option C. Discuss the candidate's performance concerns with colleagues in other departments to gather their opinions and insights on how to handle such situations. Option D. Overlook the performance dip to avoid potential conflict and ensure the candidate's application proceeds without further scrutiny. The correct answer is B. Initiate a confidential review of the candidate's full assessment record with the admissions committee to determine if the performance dip is an anomaly or indicative of a larger issue, and follow established university protocols for addressing such concerns. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it pits the immediate need to address a performance shortfall against the ethical obligation to maintain confidentiality and avoid prejudicing an individual's career without due process. The university entrance exam context implies a need for fairness and adherence to established procedures for evaluating candidates. Careful judgment is required to balance the desire for transparency in performance metrics with the protection of individual rights and the integrity of the admissions process. The correct approach involves a structured and confidential review process that respects the candidate's privacy and allows for a fair assessment of their performance. This aligns with general ethical principles of fairness and due process, and implicitly with any university regulations that govern admissions and candidate evaluation, which would typically require objective assessment and protection of personal information. The university's commitment to academic integrity and fair evaluation necessitates that any concerns about performance are addressed through established, transparent, and non-discriminatory channels, rather than through informal or potentially biased discussions. An incorrect approach of discussing the candidate's performance issues with other faculty members without a formal need-to-know or proper authorization violates principles of confidentiality and could lead to reputational damage for the candidate and the university. This action bypasses established review procedures and could be seen as a breach of trust. Another incorrect approach of immediately disqualifying the candidate based on preliminary performance data without a thorough review or opportunity for the candidate to respond is premature and unfair. It fails to acknowledge that performance can fluctuate and that a comprehensive evaluation is necessary. A third incorrect approach of ignoring the performance concerns to avoid conflict would be a dereliction of duty, as it fails to uphold the university's standards for academic performance and could allow an underqualified candidate to be admitted, potentially impacting the academic environment. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to university policies and ethical guidelines. This involves 1. Identifying the core issue, a performance concern impacting admissions. 2. Consulting relevant university policies, seeking guidance on performance evaluation, admissions criteria, and candidate data privacy. 3. Escalating the issue through appropriate channels, reporting the concern to the admissions committee or relevant academic department head for formal review. 4. Ensuring confidentiality, strictly limiting discussions to those directly involved in the official review process. 5. Following established procedures, allowing for a fair and objective assessment of the candidate's performance, including any opportunity for the candidate to provide context or address concerns. Question 19. Strategic planning requires a university to evaluate potential funding sources. Imagine Quds Open University is approached by a prominent businessperson offering a substantial donation. However, preliminary inquiries suggest this individual's wealth may be derived from practices that are ethically questionable and could potentially tarnish the university's reputation. The university's budget is currently strained, making this donation highly attractive. What is the most ethically sound and strategically prudent course of action for the university's leadership? Option A. Accept the donation immediately to address the urgent budgetary needs, assuming the donor's past practices are irrelevant to the university's mission. Option B. Accept the donation but discreetly use the funds for projects that are entirely separate from the donor's business interest to mitigate reputational damage. Option C. Accept the donation and publicly acknowledge the donor without any further investigation, focusing solely on the financial benefit to the university. Option D. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence investigation into the donor's background and the source of their wealth, assessing potential ethical and reputational risks before making a decision. Correct answer is D. Conduct a comprehensive due diligence investigation into the donor's background and the source of their wealth, assessing potential ethical and reputational risks before making a decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term ethical implications of accepting funding from a source with questionable practices. Strategic planning requires careful consideration of not only financial viability, but also the institution's reputation, ethical standing, and alignment with its educational mission. The decision-maker must navigate the pressure to secure funds against the responsibility to uphold ethical standards and avoid association with activities that could undermine public trust and the university's integrity. The correct approach involves a thorough due diligence process that prioritizes ethical considerations and institutional values. This includes investigating the potential donor's background, scrutinizing the source of their wealth, and assessing the reputational risks associated with accepting their contribution. If the investigation reveals significant ethical concerns or potential conflicts of interest, the responsible action is to decline the donation, even if it means foregoing immediate financial gain. This aligns with the ethical principles of integrity, transparency, and accountability expected of educational institutions. Upholding these principles safeguards the university's reputation and ensures its operations are conducted in a manner that benefits society. An incorrect approach would be to accept the donation without adequate investigation, driven solely by the immediate financial benefit. This demonstrates a failure in due diligence and a disregard for ethical implications, potentially exposing the university to reputational damage and public criticism. Another incorrect approach is to accept the donation, but attempt to conceal the donor's background or the controversial nature of their funding. This constitutes a lack of transparency and honesty, which are fundamental ethical requirements. Furthermore, accepting the donation and then attempting to use it for projects that are unrelated to the donor's questionable activities does not absolve the university of its ethical responsibility. The association remains, and the reputational risk persists. Professionals faced with such dilemmas should employ a structured decision-making process. This involves identifying the ethical issue, gathering all relevant information through thorough due diligence, consulting with relevant stakeholders, e.g., ethics committee, legal counsel, senior leadership, evaluating the potential consequences of each course of action, and making a decision that is consistent with the institution's values, ethical guidelines, and applicable regulations. Prioritizing long-term institutional integrity over short-term financial gains is a hallmark of responsible leadership. Question 20. The evaluation methodology shows a pattern of unusual similarities between a candidate's submitted work and publicly available online resources, raising concerns about potential academic dishonesty during the Quds Open University entrance exam. The candidate is a promising applicant with strong potential. Option A. Initiate a formal investigation into the suspected academic dishonesty, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond, in accordance with Quds Open University's academic integrity policies. Option B. Overlook the similarities, considering the candidate's potential, and proceed with their application without addressing the concerns. Option C. Immediately disqualify the candidate from the entrance exam based on the initial suspicion of plagiarism without further investigation. Option D. Contact the candidate and suggest they withdraw their application to avoid further scrutiny, without a formal investigation. The correct answer is A. Initiate a formal investigation into the suspected academic dishonesty, gathering all relevant evidence and providing the candidate an opportunity to respond, in accordance with Quds Open University's academic integrity policies. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for a higher grade and the academic integrity principles upheld by Quds Open University. The pressure to perform well on entrance exams can lead students to seek unfair advantages, requiring faculty and administrators to maintain vigilance and uphold ethical standards. Careful judgment is required to balance fairness to all students with the need to identify and address academic misconduct. The correct approach involves a thorough and impartial investigation of the alleged misconduct, adhering strictly to Quds Open University's established academic integrity policies. This approach is right because it upholds the university's commitment to academic honesty, ensures a fair process for the student accused, and protects the integrity of the entrance examination. Specifically, university regulations likely mandate a formal review process that includes gathering evidence, providing the student an opportunity to respond, and making a decision based on established criteria. This aligns with the ethical principle of fairness and due process. An incorrect approach of immediately disqualifying the student without a proper investigation fails to provide due process and could lead to an unjust outcome. This violates the ethical principle of fairness and potentially university policy regarding disciplinary procedures. Another incorrect approach of ignoring the allegation due to the student's perceived potential or the inconvenience of an investigation undermines academic integrity and sets a precedent that misconduct may be overlooked, which is ethically unsound and contrary to the university's mission. A third incorrect approach of pressuring the student to withdraw without a formal process circumvents established procedures and is ethically questionable, as it may coerce a student into admitting fault or accepting consequences without a fair hearing. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and ethical principles. This involves 1. Recognizing the potential ethical conflict. 2. Consulting relevant university policies and guidelines on academic integrity. 3. Gathering all available evidence impartially. 4. Providing the accused student with a clear understanding of the allegations and their rights. 5. Conducting a fair and thorough investigation, allowing the student to present their case. 6. Making a decision based on the evidence and university regulations. 7. Documenting all steps taken and the rationale for the decision.